Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. I've been away for a bit, but the inventory shows are returning. Today, we're going to go through a number of watches, all of which are for sale on our website, and if not listed, in all cases, you can email me at tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing, sales, and trades. Again, reach out. All of these watches are for sale. Prices, when available, as well as names and references, are below in the description. So let's get started with a bang. Launched back in 2018, the Patek Philippe 5270 1R is pretty much your ideal rose gold complication. A gorgeous black lacquer ebony dial, perpetual calendar, and chronograph in a lush 41mm red gold case. One of the advantages of doing these solo videos of inventory is that I can get much closer to the dials as well as the movements. Now you can see the dial of this one is gorgeous. A combination of black lacquer, rose gold applique, rose gold leaf hands, and you'll note a perpetual calendar. It includes both the day-night indicator, the leap year cycle, down at the bottom in twin apertures. The original 5270 bowed back in 2011, and a lot of folks took issue with the originally austere and later crowded dial. The post-2013 versions of the dial have been far more, shall we say, becoming of a highly technical complication, and this one, with the absence of the much maligned chin, might be the perfect balance of technical aesthetic and clutterless clear. Now let's get super close and take a look at the movement. Now this is caliber 535, CH29 535 Petit Second. As you can see, absolutely gorgeous. Beaten away at 4 Hertz or 8 beats per second. You can see the Gyromax style balance, free sprung and adjusted in 6 positions with a overcoil hairspring. The premier Patek complications still use a conventional ferrous overcoil made by hand. Now the watch uses a lateral clutch and a column wheel. You can see the column wheel black polished and gorgeous. The lateral clutch entirely satinated on its tops and beveled on its sides. Note that the clutch is fully jeweled. Now the timepiece, of course, a perpetual calendar and a chronograph. It is able to deal with irregular length months as well as leap years, and because it is a lateral clutch chronograph, you see everything big and beautiful. It should be noted that in service, lateral clutch chronographs at Patek Philippe actually go to higher level watchmakers than the vertical clutch. As you can see, there is a sort of ratchet and pawl instantaneous jump system for the chronograph. When it jumps, it does so instantaneously thanks to the mechanism underneath the chronograph bridge. You'll appreciate the fact that the watch is immaculately hand finished, and unlike many previous Patek calibers, features hacking seconds. This perpetual calendar chronograph with a 65-hour power reserve manually wound. And I must say, the column wheel feel best in the biz. Of course, throw it on the wrist. You can see my wrist 16 centimeters in circumference. It fits low and flush. Though 41 millimeters, it's nicely shaped and sculpted lug to lug to fit easily over the wrist. Ideal for a wrist 14 centimeters or larger. We'll jump out real quick, take a broad view, and we will progress to our next contestant. Everything, of course, on the show is for sale if you're just joining in or if you're just starting to pay attention. tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Prices, sales, and trades. Names and references in the description. We'll jump straight into a brand that I adore, and I'm sure you feel likewise, a Lange Sohne, 40 millimeters in rose gold. This is the 1815 in rose gold. The Saxonia featuring stick indices, the Richard Lange featuring Roman numerals, and the 1815 featuring these Arabic numerals vertically arrayed. Nice and slender at under 10 millimeters. You can see it's a flat, flush, and broad watch with a sterling silver dial, a rose gold case, and a movement manually wound, including, let's get close here, a 55-hour power reserve beating away at 21.6. Now you can see the German silver, that nickel copper zinc that gives it a golden hue. Freehand engraved half bridge for the balance, black polished swan's neck, escape wheel cock cover, and then you can see that there is a 3/4 style bridge in the fashion of old German pocket watches with pivot jewels set in screw fixed chaton. Note the use of both black polished as well as blued screws. This watch has it all. Now the timepiece is the first of several Lange we're going to have on the show, and as you can tell, I'm going to run the table with a few of my favorites here. Sticking with our early program, Lange and Patek theme, this is the 3940 in rose gold. Now the timepiece features an unconventional but handsome bone white dial with black Roman numerals radially arrayed, and as you can see, lovely spade style hands at center, which are likewise blackened. It is a perpetual calendar, 36.2 millimeters in diameter in rose gold. The timepiece is ultra slender at about 9 millimeters thick. It's gorgeous and graceful with a thin mid case, and as you can see, a lovely sculpted bezel profile that gives it strength without mass. Throw it on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, and you can see it's nice, compact. It is a traditional men's dress watch made between 1986, or really late 1985 and 2006. The 3940 was built in about 7,000 examples, and that's rather few considering the decades of production. No period was bereft of less than several of these designs, so though there are 7,000 of them, there are not many of each individual design, especially some of the particularly striking and offbeat designs such as this one of the most memorable and least often seen. Now, it has a simple rose gold spade style pin buckle. We'll throw this watch down and take a look at what's on the back side. As you can see, Patek Philippe caliber 240Q perpetual calendar, micro rotor automatic with a lovely engraved 22 karat winding mass, thin like a manual and open and visible like a manual, but with the convenience of an automatic. Adjusted in 5 positions, it also features the Geneva hallmark, the Poinçon de Genève, and a free-sprung gyromax style balance beating away at 21.6. You can see lush Côte de Genève across the bridges, mirrored anglage on the edges. The 240 was the upscale Patek automatic. The center rotors were generally the standard production. You can see engine-turned perlage on the base plate, as well as black polish on every screw head with chamfered slots and circumference. A beautifully made movement, nice, thin, and of course the upscale automatic for a perpetual calendar capable of dealing with irregular length months and leap years. We'll jump rather quickly to the Rolex Daytona. Now, I teased this one on the thumbnail, so I may as well deliver for you. 40 millimeters in diameter in stainless steel. There are 2 versions of this watch launched at Basel World 2016. The first is the white dial, which I find is actually more common among the two. And of the two, I actually prefer the black dial, and you can see why. The black dial extends into the ceramic bezel, creating an apparent mega dial that gives you the impression of a larger watch. The extension of the dial into the bezel as one large black disc gives the watch an imposing stance and presence on the wrist that the white dial does not have, in my opinion. Now, it's not a thick watch, 12.2 millimeters thick, 100 meters water resistant, full steel bracelet, oyster with an easy link 5 millimeter tool-free extension. Lovely black lacquer dial with white gold hands, Rolex crown, and loomed indices inside. 3-day power reserve, manufacturer Rolex caliber 4130. It's vertical clutch and column wheel, a COSC certified chronometer, and highly anti-magnetic thanks to a blue oxidized niobium zirconium hairspring known as parachrom blue in Rolex parlance. Beats away at 4 hertz or 8 beats per second. And I should mention that this automatic winder was one of the first Rolex movements to use a bearing rather than a jeweled staff for its winding mass, making it more shock resistant. Water resistant, shock resistant, and anti-magnetic. It is the full service sports chronograph, and the pusher feel is exemplary, world class, and right up there with Patek and Lange. You never know what's coming next during my bootleg inventory show. As you can see, the timepiece in my hand is very much a creature of a different era. Part of the 44mm Royal Oak Offshore family that became full-time in the lineup rather than an occasional special edition back in 2011. This timepiece is all black, but it does it the right way, with ceramic rather than some sort of PVD. You can never scratch through to a shiny metal underneath ceramic. And at 44mm, you would expect the watch to be overpowering in its mass, but it's not, because ceramic is also not very dense, and thus it feels light on the wrist. The watch is actually broad and flat, not terribly thick, just under 15 millimeters thick. It appears broad and flush, which gives it an elegance that belies its all-black aesthetic and its outright dimensions. Now you can see there's a handsome nickel anthracite color to the Mega Tapisserie hobnail dial, plenty of lume, and a lovely brushed metallic tachymeter outside of the dial to allow reading of speed over a closed course by a racing boat, aircraft, or car. 50 to 55 hour power reserve, courtesy of manufactured caliber 3126 inside. Now you can see a full balance bridge with a free sprung index for shock resistance. The 3120 family was designed from the outset to be used in sports watches like the Offshore, and this watch, of course, also 100 meters water resistant with a screw down crown. Very versatile, handsomely made. You can see that there's a lovely double finished, polished, satinated, and I might even say triple finished. It is a polished, satinated, and media blasted rotor. The timepiece is handsome, robust, beats away at 21.6, and thanks to the screw-down crown with a ceramic shoulder, it is a very tough and scratch-resistant, water-resistant, shock-resistant sports watch. I should mention that the crowns are all ceramic capped for scratch resistance, and you can see that the watch even features modular crown guards and shear guards that can be removed if they are ever scratched. AP does things the right way, using screws and bars to retain straps, especially on a large high-value watch like this. It's the right way to do it. Now the timepiece, of course, has a Dubois de Praz module on top of the AP base, and the DD module has a nice smooth vertical clutch action that I find to be an advantage of this particular setup. Again, my wrist 16 centimeters circumference. I could recommend this watch for wrist as small as 15 centimeters circumference. Today's show has nothing if not variety, and the Master Ultra Thin Reserve de Marche was the latest in a long line of much-loved JLC Power Reserve complications dating back to the original Powermatic of the 1950s. Now you can see the watch, and by the way, that one I believe dates even to the late 1940s. The watch you see here is 39 millimeters in stainless steel, 9.9 millimeters thick, so it lives up to its name. You can see there's a handsomely sculpted bezel that has a vertical element in two places, and then a conical element connecting the two of them. All of high polish. You can see the lugs are spare, beautifully sculpted, with a little bit of a transitional bevel that expands at the end of the lug. Now the dial is silver. It features a power reserve indicator, and with approximately a 40-hour power reserve, you can see the Reserve de Marche moves rather rapidly as you wind the watch. There is a radial date indication that you adjust with a pusher, and the watch does feature a stop seconds functionality with a dimple-style minutes track outboard. The dial is a simple silver sunburst. Turn it all over, and you can see the JLC movement that makes it all possible. Caliber 936, which as you can see is free, 938, which as you can see is free sprung. It beats away at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and it actually features a hairspring that is laser welded at the stud and the collet for further stability against shock. Handsome fired blue screws, engine turned base plate, and Côte de Genève across the rotor as well as the bridges. It is a good looking manufactured movement that is thin like the watch, and exceptionally JLC prescribes 50 meters of water resistance to its dress watches, which I find to be superior. Uncommon, unexpected, but it should be the industry standard. Now the timepiece is flat, flush, and gorgeous on the wrist. As you can see, it sits low. It'll fit underneath any kind of a cuff whatsoever, and it includes one upscale accessory that I find laudable, as a lot of watches today are being equipped with pin buckles to lower their price at retail. JLC giving you a full steel deploying clasp here, and if you look very carefully, you can actually push this tab on the bottom to separate the clasp from the strap without tools. So again, JLC giving you more than you expect in every regard. Still the watchmaker's watchmaker. Speaking of watchmakers, sometimes clients favor when a man and the brand are both one. The man and the brand, F.P. Journe. He invented it and he made it. This is the Chronometre Souverain, a timepiece that actually won the men's watch prize at the GPHG in 2005. 40 millimeters in rose gold. It has a lovely silver dial and a power reserve that works backwards like an ancient deck clock or marine chronometer. It indicates 0 when it is fully wound, which means 0 hours since it was last wound. Why that instead of indicating power reserve remaining? Because with a deck clock and a navigation chronometer, you wanted to wind the watch at the same time every 24 hours. So it was important to know when you hit 24 hours elapsed since winding, rather than knowing how long the clock would run outright. So this has the same kind of backward power reserve, 0 hours since wound. 56-hour power reserve, as you can see the classic Journe blue biomorphic hands with a counterweighted needle style small seconds and a railroad track for both minutes and seconds. Turn it all over, you can see it's a handsome case, beautifully polished in all aspects with a lip that defines the mid case between the bezel and the case back. The caliber is entirely 18 karat rose gold, caliber 1304, 13 French lean, and 04, meaning that was the year work started. It beats away at 21.6. It is free sprung, and you can see it uses Journe's hidden escapement train. So the escapement is visible, but the train to the escapement is actually underneath the dial. So the hidden train leading from the two power sources, the barrels, to the escapement, completely invisible, creating a broad open gulf between the barrels and the escapement that allows you to appreciate the multiplicity of finish on this movement. Black polished screws, linear Côte de Genève. As you can see, engine turned perlage below the balance. You can see there's a lovely rayon or Côte de Soleil that explodes out from underneath the barrels. Then there's a satin finish on the wheels and the barrels themselves, all of it gorgeous. This is one of the most accurate watches FP Journe can make, which is why he dubs it Chronometre Souverain. And of course, 56-hour power reserve, manually wound, an accurate and flush and flat watch from the old school of FP Journe watch design, back when he prized that thin, saucer-like aspect ratio above all other aesthetic traits. And of course, the watch does include a rose gold pin buckle to match. Let's go big, real big. Back in the late 2000s, Panerai was on a depth gauge kick. Following depth gauge watches from the likes of IWC and Jaeger-LeCoultre, Panerai decided it was going to go its own way, first in 2007 with the 193, and then in 2008 with this titanium 500-piece 47mm limited edition Luminor submersible depth gauge Pangea, associated with the explorer and adventurer Mike Horn and his 35mm boat Pangea, which refers to a landmass, a monomass that existed 300 million years ago. Think all of the continents in one. But this watch is exceptional because of its modern day technology, and you can see the blue dial, the yellow accents, and a battery powered depth gauge. Now, it is a 120-meter water resistant dive watch with a unidirectional bezel. Let's have a listen. Probably the best pure dive bezel feel and sound in the business. And of course, it's got the locking lever as you expect on a Luminor or a Luminor submersible. I can do this and you know who made this watch. It's iconic design, but it's also good design as it offers more protection from blows and shearing. Now on the dial, there is a depth gauge, and what will happen is it's powered by a battery. It will start beeping if it gets too low to read accurately, so there is an end-of-life indicator. You can see there is the image of the monomass, all the continents together, Pangea, and the Mike Horn signature. The watch is over 22 millimeters thick, so this is one for business purposes only. And by business, I mean pro-diving business, as this is a depth gauge. Electronically powered, but driven by pressure. You press one time to see the previous deepest dive, and you hold down for 6 seconds to reset the mechanism, so to reset it after a dive. Now the system, of course, is built on top of a mechanical movement, Panerai caliber 15 inside. It's basically a 7750 P1, or the Valjoux 7750 without a chronograph mechanism. So it's got a 42-hour power reserve, and it is a COSC certified Swiss chronometer. As you can see, Panerai uses a quick change system that protects you from marring the lugs with screwdrivers or strap tools. And when you buy this watch, a special series, you get the works strap tools, a spare strap, a spare buckle. You get a COSC chronometer certification and a beautiful varnished wooden box for this limited edition. It's a gorgeous piece, and I know you're waiting for that wrist shot. There it is right there. The look is big, the style is huge, and this watch is all about visibility. Not just conspicuous consumption, which it undoubtedly is, but also the practicality that comes with a large, highly visible professional diving tool. 47 millimeters in titanium, so it's under 200 grams. It is still a wearable watch. Do you consider yourself more of a Panerai traditionalist? Well, let's go all the way back to 1936. This is the Panerai Radiomir 1936 PAM 249, California dial with the Romans on the top and the Arabic numerals on the bottom. As you can see, time only with a lovely gilt-style chaptering outboard underneath a genuine plexiglass crystal. You can see there is work to do, opus facere, and then there are wire-style lugs which can be removed using the Panerai tool. Just pull out the screws and the lugs withdraw, allowing you to replace the strap easily. The watch features a screw-down crown, as did the original 1936 Rolex oyster-cased and Rolex-built 3646 combat watches. Now inside this case, by the watch, as you can see, is a more of a sports casual watch at 30 meters water resistant. It's not a watch that you want to use for aggressive sporting purposes, but it is a beautiful thing. As you can see, there is a ETA or Unitas 6497 inside, beating away at 21.6. It has a superior 56-hour power reserve. So this is the 6497-2, upgraded over the standard, both aesthetically and in terms of its beat rate and power reserve. The timepiece is gorgeous, and it is a well-known, well-loved 1,936 piece limited edition. The timepiece on my wrist, we'll take a quick look. It looks good, it feels good. It is probably the ultimate non-PAM21 wire lug Radiomir. Now, I know folks are going to have various thoughts about that, but I like this one. The look, the feel, the ambiance, and the connection to history. Whether or not you buy the historical accuracy of the California dial on a 1936 Panerai, it is a gorgeous piece that looks good, and it's about as close as you can get to a dress watch in the Panerai catalog, at least for a guy. A real good-looking piece. Iconic in its own right, it is a very different and more refined, more historically oriented look than the Luminor. Now let's jump back to Jaeger-LeCoultre. I was there at SIHH in 2018 when the Polaris collection arrived, not as a one-off tribute as in the past, but as a full-fledged model line. And this might have been the best overall offering. In rose gold, the Polaris Chronograph, 42 millimeters in red gold. You can see that the case, at least, echoes the 1965 to 1970 Polaris diving alarm design. Now, this is not a diving alarm. It is a chronograph. You can see that there's a handsome array of satin as well as polish, and the lugs are nicely broken out from the case band to prevent a monomass aesthetic. Rolling onto the dial, you can see it's a lovely ruthenium coat, dark, almost like a nickel anthracite coating with several different finishes. You can see the tachymeter, which is used for gauging the speed of an object over a closed course. That is a matte finish. Then there is a lovely chisel-like rusticated finish, almost concrete-like, outboard of a sunburst center, and of course there are twin registers. You can see they are both chronograph registers, so when the chronograph is not running, it's a very still, balanced dial. It doesn't even have a date. Applique rose gold indices, numerals, and rose gold hands. You'll appreciate the fact that with a vertical clutch you can run the chronograph full time. The watch is highly water resistant and swimmable. As you can see, 100 meters water resistant. Let me bring in my polishing cloth here. The JLC 750 family of chronograph calibers, this is the 751, previously only visible in display casebacks in its Cartier application. This movement's now visible. A column wheel vertical clutch twin barrel movement with a 65-hour power reserve. It is free sprung for durability and beats away at 28,800 vibrations per hour. As you can see, though the watch does not feature a seconds hand, it does feature a stop seconds function. The column wheel is visible through a skeletonized bridge above, and of course the vertical clutch allows for both a smooth engagement of the chronograph seconds hand, and it prevents you from wearing down the mechanism if you prefer to run the chronograph full time and have hours, minutes, and seconds at center and just ignore the chronograph registers. Thanks to the vertical clutch, you can run this thing full time without wearing it down. Another detail worth mentioning, the standard versions of this watch include tungsten rotors. The rose gold version features the rose gold rotor that you see right here. And of course the watch is matched with a full deployant JLC clasp. This is a different design than the one we saw before, aesthetically different, although it has that same push button release system that allows you to release the clasp from the strap without any intervention of a tool. What's new for 2018 was the addition of these pull tab spring bars, so you can both remove the straps from the case and remove the clasp from the strap for easy swapping at home. Throw it on my wrist real quick. It's a watch that is best described as a deeply charismatic dress style watch with sports watch durability and versatility. It's a good looking piece. There is simply no doubt of that. And if you want it to be your sports watch, your dress watch, your only watch, can do that. You'll also note it's thin, so it fits easily underneath the cuff. A very special piece. Alright, jumping back to the world of Panerai, you can see this is the Panerai Luminor 1950s Flyback Panerai Classic Yachts Challenge 3 days PAM 654. And as you can see, the 654, a 2017 launch, is a special edition dedicated to the Classic Yachts Challenge, a race series for classic yachts run by Panerai. In fact, Panerai owns one of the vessels that is a Perpetual competitor. This was very near and dear to Angelo Bonatti, the first and for most of its existence only CEO of Panerai under Richemont. Now you can see there's a handsome polished and media blasted case back, all of this water resistant to 100 meters, and inside the case of this watch, which was a 500-piece series for the year, you have that 3-day automatic winding vertical clutch column wheel Panerai manufactured caliber 9100. You can see that like an old Lemania 5100, it features both chronograph seconds and chronograph minutes at center. So you have that flyback functionality where you can reset and restart with a single push of the trigger down at 8 o'clock, but then you can also use the chronograph in conventional fashion, I should say. It's a handsome look and a different one with that simulated lume or photina on top of the white base, and it is a true white base, not silver. Interesting note right here, not only is it a flyback chronograph with a unique central register system for the minutes, but you can also see that the tachymeter has been calibrated for the speeds that are germane to sailboat racing or regatta. You're not going to be, unless you're really good at remembering units, you're not going to be measuring things running at hundreds or thousands of kilometers per hour or miles per hour on this tachymeter, which is both base 1 nautical mile and calibrated low. Of course, a good-looking piece, a handsome piece, a comfortable piece. On the wrist, you could see my 16-centimeter circumference wrist wears it well, and I would go so far as to say that even if your wrist is 14 centimeters circumference, this particular Luminor 1950 case, which is nominally per Panerai a 44, it's going to wear decently, and I would say down to 14 centimeters circumference, you're probably going to be very happy with this watch. You can also see that it features the quick release system that we witnessed on the Pangea earlier, making strap swapping that much easier, and of course there is the locking lever system. I'm a big fan of that. I actually had a Panerai PAM 40 on my desktop of my old Dell in my first day of my first term of my first year of college. We've come a long way, but the important things never change, Panerai. Boom. Like I said, you already know who makes this watch. Covered up, you already know who makes that watch. That is iconic design. But in the pantheon of design icons, there are icons and then there are legendary icons, and this is the latter. Of course, originally designed in 1972 by Gerald Gent, the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak has taken every form over the years. From skeletons to perpetual calendars to tourbillon to chronographs, I would have to say the last has become the most popular Royal Oak complication category. Now this one is gorgeous. The 25960 BA for yellow gold, as you can see back from the factory. This one is so fresh, I'm not even gonna pop the seal. So much is still in place from the factory after service, from the surfacing of the material, which is immaculate, to the movement itself, which is effectively virgin, completely rebuilt and adjusted for the next owner. This is a rare opportunity to own an F-Series, so mid-2000s, 39mm yellow gold Royal Oak chronograph. Silver dial, as you can see, but with lovely polished yellow gold chapter rings for the registers. It is a Grand Tapisserie with the large hobnail cut on a pantograph. Now back in the 2000s, this would have been made by Stern Frere, a Richemont-owned company that was originally founded by the controlling family of Patek Philippe. So yes, Stern Frere meant those Sterns. Now this timepiece is like an anthology of the best of Swiss watchmaking, with the Stern Frere dial, the Audemars Piguet bracelet and case, entirely hand-finished and handcrafted, and then on the inside of Frédéric Piguet 1185, basically a Blancpain integrated hand-finished 5-position adjusted vertical clutch column wheel chronograph, all of it with screw-down crown and pushers that allow you to swim, not dive, but swim with this luxury complication. It's somewhere between a dress watch and a sports watch. It has the ambiance and attitude of a sports watch, but with the delicacy, thin profile, and high horology pedigree of a dress timepiece. Now again, because this one is still buttoned down and buttoned up, I'm not going to put it on the wrist, but you get a general idea of its size, as it's not a large watch, it's not a thick watch, and it's not an overbearing watch. Though as a Royal Oak in yellow gold, it has immense gravitas and presence, on the wrist or off. This one can be described as a refugee from Baselworld 2019, or as we might come to describe it, the last Baselworld. This is the Patek Philippe 5231J yellow gold, the successor to the 5131 as the cloisonné dial world time Patek Philippe. You could call it a Calatrava world time if you want, but the timepiece is nuanced, and in many regards it's been developed as an identity of its own, not so much dependent on reflected glory from the Calatrava line as it is its own institution, a craft art and an approval piece, which is to say the Stern family that we mentioned a moment ago has to approve you for purchase. This is a rare timepiece in the sense that it represents craft art production, not mass production. Even at Patek Philippe, there is an element of mass production, but when cloisonné enamel dials and hand-finished movements come into play, especially the combination of the two, you are talking about small-scale production. Now let's get close, because though this is a world time, and as you can see, you set your current time zone at the index at 12 o'clock. Let's say I'm in Buenos Aires and I want to travel to London. The watch does all the math for me. There is a 24-hour reference ring inboard that moves in a counterclockwise direction. You look at the city adjacent to the hour, and you can find the hour in any of the world's principal 24 time zones. Now, the timepiece features a cloisonné enamel dial, which means it is grand faux, fired up to 20 times at 800 degrees centigrade, but it's also cloisonné, which means the cloison, or the gold wires used to create the image of the landmass, are placed by hand and then filled with different amounts of enamel, a vitreous paint that has to be fired to set it. So you have different colors of enamel, thicknesses of enamel, and then you have the cloison to create the image of the land masses. The timepiece, of course, is very special and very rare, as it is a craft art and a feat of engineering all in one, using the Louis Cotier designed world time system as refined by Patek Philippe. Now note, unlike the 5131, which featured integrated blended lug profiles, here we have both no crown guard and sharply stepped out lugs that have a lovely concave rounded bowl-like profile to them that I happen to adore. It's a sharp, geometrically faceted case that's different from the bosomy soft lines of the old 5131. Now you can see inside caliber 240 HU Universal. It is a gorgeous piece. Same 48-hour power reserve as the standard 240. You can see a Gyromax free-sprung balance, and this one is adjusted in 6 positions. It has the Spiromax anti-magnetic silicone hairspring. In every other regard, the finish is everything you expect from Patek Philippe. Let's throw this one on the wrist. Different. Change the orientation. Jump back. Into focus. There we go. 16 centimeter circumference wrist, 38.5 millimeter watch that's about 10.5 millimeters thick. It's a handsome and versatile piece that I can recommend for a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference. So you don't need an imposing wrist to wear an imposing watch. And of course, there is a matching yellow gold folding clasp with the Calatrava cross externally, all of high polish internally. Nicely made, a thoughtful watch from stem to stern, or I should say dial to case back. I should remind everyone who might just be tuning in that all of these watches are for sale, and to reach out to me for prices, accessories, condition, extra photos, and of course trade proposals, email tmosso@thewatchbox.com. We're into the home stretch now, and this is a timepiece that I love because first, I enjoy color on my watches. Second, I enjoy a bit of whimsy, and as you can see, this Automatique Lune has both. Part of the Nacre dial series that debuted back in 2012, it features a blue mother-of-pearl dial blueprinted. You can see the entire dial has been blueprinted right down to the date discs of the Grand Date. There is a power reserve indicator which is different from that of the Chronometre Souverain in that it does indicate the number of hours remaining until the watch runs out. So it's not a reverse power reserve like a chronometer, it's a conventional wristwatch power reserve. You'll appreciate the fact that the dial is both blue mother-of-pearl and silver with those characteristic Journe biomorphic hands in a 40 millimeter platinum case. And here we've got caliber 1300, which is an automatic rose gold movement. I'm going to get as close as I can here because autofocus has abandoned me and this thing's trying to focus on its own, which is to say on its own where I don't want it to focus, but we're good. 18 karat rose gold, 21.6 beat rate, free sprung. You can see the balance is enormous. So though it's a 21.6 rate, the inertia of that balance will be able to counter shock induced timing deviation. The rotor is 22 karat gold in both black polished and barley corn cut on a rose lathe. You can see this is the 1303, which makes some changes from the original 1300, most notably unidirectional winding for greater efficiency. And though the watch is said to run for 120 hours on its power reserve indicator, the reality is that it will actually run for close to 7 days. So over 160 hours is reality, but FP Journe says the chronometric power reserve during which the watch will run ideally is 120 hours. Zoom out real quick, throw it on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. It is a 40 millimeter platinum watch with a handsome flat aspect ratio, saucer-like, broad and flush, easy to fit underneath the cuff with a domed bezel that allows it to slide easily under a sleeve, and then it has a simple pin buckle in platinum to match. Ah, Lange. An expression, not just a brand. And this is the Lange One Moon. The Lange One Moon is a gorgeous piece. And as you can see, this one, 38.5 millimeters in platinum with a lovely ruthenium darkened dial of sterling silver with white gold applique indices, as well as Roman numerals, is precious metal inside and out, and quite a bit of it. Platinum case, sterling silver dial, all hands and applique in white gold, and then you actually have a solid gold Moonphase disc, as Lange uses 2 upscale refinements in all of its Moonphase complications. The first, solid gold. The second, a 122-year adjustment interval. Most brands will reserve that for perpetual calendars. Lange instead uses the 122-year adjustment interval rather than the more common 2 3/4. So it's an upscale complication in both material composition and engineering refinement. Note this is a loomed dial, as Lange allows you to see both the time and your relative power reserve when the lights go out. Now let's just make sure this one is through the date change danger zone, and that's why we do that. And you can see there is a small pusher adjuster on the flank that allows you to toggle the date. This is a wonderful way to experience the tactile sensation of a fine column wheel chronograph without actually getting into a chronograph. I could play with this all day. It is as smooth as silk and somehow as crisp as a rifle bolt. Turn it all over, and you see a version of the original Lange One caliber. All of the aesthetic refinements we noted earlier, 3-day power reserve, manual wind, 21.6 beat rate, I should say, and of course that free sprung half bridge for the balance with a black polished swan's neck at top and a black polished cap to the cock for the escape wheel. You'll also note that there is a mirrored anglage on the edge of every bridge as well as on the edge of all the access panels that are cut into the 3/4 style bridge. A gorgeous looking piece and a fun one to wear because almost everyone can play. The size of this watch, 38.5, means it's universally wearable. Big wrist, small wrist, unisex options, everything's on the table with this Lange One Moonphase, a truly special piece that is the original Lange One 38.5. They got it right out of the gate. There was no need to make changes. You can even see that the case is fairly nuanced with both polish and satin and the characteristic Lange lugs broken out as separate sculptural pieces. And if blue mother of pearl isn't your thing, a little bit too extravagant, too exhibitionist, perhaps too dainty, then you might want a standard Octa Divine in platinum. You have a lovely white gold media blasted dial surrounded by a polished bolt fixed inert bezel that doubles as the hour and minute track. Now you can see here, once again, we have a conventional power reserve that winds toward 120 hours as you wind the watch. Now, of course, this is another caliber 1300 automatic. Let's jump in a little bit close for better detail. You can see that there is a Moonphase. Now, what I love, let's just make sure we're through the date change danger zone here. That's why I check. What I love here is that there are no extraneous adjusters on the case flank. Everything you need to do with this watch can be done using the crown. You can adjust the Moonphase, or you can adjust the oversized date. Power reserve, oversized date, and a Moonphase, triple complication, and that's before we even get to the movement, which is another caliber 1300 in rose gold. Still the 1303, the latest version. Again, 5 days power reserve rated, 7 days power reserve fact, a gorgeous looking piece that is extensively hand finished. FP Journe movements are generally a judicious combination of hand finish and machine finish. The result is a watch that's honestly priced. If I were to say just one brand in the ultra haute de gamme segment doesn't price gouge, it would be FP Journe, followed closely by de Bethune. As you can see, this is a special timepiece and it wears like one. Platinum at 40 millimeters, but also reasonably flat and easy to wear under a cuff. It's a dress watch, but with a white metal and a gray dial. It's also sports casual, so while 30 meters means you can't take it swimming, nevertheless, it is appropriate in almost any sartorial circumstance one can conceive. A good look, what I like in particular is that the short and tightly downturned lugs make this 40 wear more like a 38, so the ergonomics are outstanding. And now we roll back the clock to 2012 and the arrival of a monster from a Lange Sohne. This was always going to be my finisher, the Lange One Tourbillon Perpetual Calendar. Yes, it is a tourbillon perpetual calendar. It is also an instantaneous jumper. Let's get a little bit closer. We've got that 122-year Moonphase here in rose gold rather than the white we saw last time. You see there is a day-night indicator built into the display of time. You have, of course, the day, you have the month, you have the leap year phase, and the timepiece has a dial made of sterling silver, though it is galvanized this silver-white color. Applique rose gold indices, hands, as well as frame for the date. What I like in particular is that this watch, though a tourbillon, features a stop seconds function, courtesy of the manufacturer caliber L0821. Now let's take a look at it because it's a monster. 50-hour power reserve, automatic winding. There's almost too much to talk about. The first thing that I want to shout out is the fact that you have a 21 karat, multiply finished yellow gold rotor attached to a platinum mass. The rotor is 21 karat, the mass is platinum. I can't think of any other brand that does that, and you'll note it's fit with both black polished pegs and blued screws. Okay, take a look at the finish. Engine turned perlage in two sizes around the circumference of the movement, a black polished cap over the rotor at center, and you're looking at a 76 jewel movement that has, well, truth be told, 76 rubies, or synthetic rubies, and one, take a look, brilliant cut diamond, a real one, on top of the tourbillon carriage. Now we'll get a little bit closer, see if we can keep this in focus. You can find that the tourbillon carriage itself, underneath that diamond capstone, rests under one of two freehand engraved half bridges. You'll also note the style of the wheels, that spiral pattern, and they are beveled on their interior. That's taken from vintage pocket watches and German clocks. Appreciate the fact that we have the German silver metal for both bridges and plates, both blued and polished screws, pivot jewels set in chaton, and then a lovely tourbillon carriage of titanium, hand finished with a wire or filigree style. And if you didn't believe me the first time, let me prove. This is a stop seconds tourbillon. You can see its action has been halted. How many of these does Lange make per year? Dozens. Not hundreds, not even 100. A very special watch, and at 41.9 millimeters, surprisingly wearable for a gonzo complication, a flagship piece from one of the greatest brands in the world. There's a lot of talk of the Holy Trinity, but realistically, it's got to be a quartet at bare minimum. And this is the entry from Saxonia. A totally breathtaking piece on a very handsome strap. You can see that this is a Jean Rousseau strap, handmade in Paris, which features a combination of a lovely deep blue or deep purple blue alligator leather, note gator on both sides, and a handsome contrasting golden stitch that perfectly sets off the rose gold of the case. I cannot do any better than the Lange One Tourbillon Perpetual Calendar in rose gold. Remember, folks, all that you see here is available at what you see here. tmosso at thewatchbox.com. Be sure to email, subscribe to the channel, of course, leave your comments below. Remember, all pricing where available is in the description below, along with model names and references. Time out, Tim out. Stay healthy, stay safe, and thanks for logging on.